All right. Well, good morning. Welcome to our morning devotions. What are we looking at? February 20th, 2025. Good to see everybody this morning. We're in episode 178 in 2 Samuel chapter 8. I posted the whole chapter, it's 18 verses. It all revolves around an accounting of the conquest of David, David's success by way of military conquest. Some very interesting material in here, especially in that he reaches all the way to the Euphrates River. And we'll look at that in just a minute. That is, the David's reach as an Israeli warrior goes all the way to the Euphrates or Mesopotamia. And the scriptures tell us back in Genesis chapter 15, the promise made to Abraham is that that would be the furthest east border of the nation of Israel, which is interesting that David not only achieves this, but so does his son Solomon. So, just interesting note here. So let's look at the text, and we see this in chapter 8, verse 1. And it says, "After this it came to pass that David smote the Philistines." So this is the first. He smites the Philistines and subdued them, and David took Meth-Gaamah out of the hand of the Philistines. So number one is he defeats the Philistines. Number two, you have Moab. And he smote Moab and measured them with a line. Now listen to this. He measured them with a line, casting them down to the ground, even with two lines measured to put to death and one full line to keep alive. So he divides the enemy, the defeated enemy Moab, into three lines. Two lines he puts to death, one line he preserves. So a third of the soldiers that were in these lines he saves. Two-thirds he kills. Now, as you consider this, this is the enemy. Actually, when we've been reading these battles. I mean, they could have all been killed. I just think it's very interesting here that this is recorded in the scripture that a third of those that were captive he keeps alive, and then it says, "And so the Moabites became David's servants and brought gifts." That is, he sends the third home, and now he's going to tax them. But their ability to go to war with him is no longer possible. Just a note here: the Moabites were descended of Lot and his daughter. All right, his oldest daughter. That's where you get Moab. All right, that's in Genesis 19:37. Edom, which we're going to see here, is the family of Esau. So Moab, the nation of Moab began with Lot in this incestuous relationship that he has with his daughter, because after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, they're and they're hiding in the mountains and the caves. They're not sure that the whole planet, from their perspective, wasn't destroyed, and they might be the only people left. I mean, it sounds absurd from where we're sitting, but if you'd have seen what God did to Sodom and Gomorrah, we might have a different perspective of this. So that's where Moab came from Lot and his oldest daughter. Her son was Moab, where you get the nation of Moab. And Edom, down here a little later, is the family of Esau, the Edomites. Okay, so let's keep going here. So the Moabites, he kills off two-thirds of them, and then a third of them he taxes. And then you come down here to verse 3, and this is huge. It says, "And David smote also Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah, as he went to recover his border at the river Euphrates." The Euphrates River is here, way east of what we now know as Israel. All right? That's in Genesis 15:18. Let me just turn back there, because this is a promise that God makes to Israel in regards to this is going to be your easternmost border. Hang on a second. In Genesis chapter 15, there are boundaries here that said, "In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land from the river of Egypt," which is the Nile, "unto the great river, the river Euphrates. And the Canaanites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Kenizzites, Perizzites, Rephaims, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, Jebusites." All right. So, just interesting note here that this border is achieved prior to for those that believe in a millennium, here. All right, this would be a near fulfillment of that promise. So goes on to say, so he takes out this king in the Mesopotamian river valley in the Euphrates River, and David took from him 1,000 chariots, 700 horsemen, 20,000 footmen, and David hoed all the chariot horses. That is, he crippled them so they couldn't pull chariots, and reserved of them 100 chariots. That is, he didn't. That is, he reserved enough horses to pull these chariots. So he saves a few horses there, but he wins the victory over someone. And everyone knows that chariots are like the Abrams tanks of the day, but he still defeats them. This is because of the hand of God upon him. It's like David is always going up against Goliath, and through his whole life he's winning. He started with Goliath, but he looks at all these nations as kind of the Goliaths and still defeats them because God is on his side, just like he was with Goliath. And then it says this in verse 5. So you got this army over by the Euphrates River, and then it says this, and when the Syrians of Damascus, which are just north of Israel, came to succor Hadadezer, king of Zobah, that is, the Syrians could see that he was being defeated. They came up to help in the battle against David. It said, David slew of the Syrians 220,000 men. They thought they were going to align themselves on the winning side, and David killed off the Syrians too. So you got the Philistines, you got the Moabites, you got these guys from the east, from Mesopotamia. Now you got the Syrians; they're defeated. And David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus. That is, he builds forts, leaves soldiers up there. That's what he does. All right. And the Syrians became servants to David and brought gifts. That is, he's taxing them now as well. And the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And I have that underlined in my Bible because this guy is a warrior's warrior. Just you listen to all of this. We're reading just a handful of verses here that required so much. This is labor intensive. This is warfare. This is moving troops. This is feeding troops. This is moving through all kinds of territory and adverse circumstances, and then actually going to battle, and then in the battle winning one after another after another. What we want to see here is God's hand is on David in one of the most dangerous parts of the whole world. He is winning because God is with him. He's winning against forces greater than him because God is with him. These are great principles to be mindful of. These are the principles we're supposed to adopt in the New Testament in a spiritual way, that by the grace of God and the Spirit of God and the Word of God within us, we're supposed to be able to go out and win and win and win and win and win the spiritual battle, win spiritual victories over enemies far greater than ourselves. I think that's just something to keep in mind, all right, because, we're up against all kinds of things, but what an example here David is for us as far as what he did physically, what we should be able to do spiritually in the power of the Lord. That's what we're looking at here. So let's keep going. And David took the shields of gold. Hadadezer from Mesopotamia over by the Euphrates River had these shields made of gold. I mean, this is worth a lot because he's going to spoil all these nations too. He's going to take all their stuff. That's what you do. To the victor goes the spoil. Well, this is David too. I mean, he's a military guy. And the Bible tells us, and David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadadezer. That is, they had shields of gold and brought them to Jerusalem. So this would have been something just extremely impressive, which also tells me Hadadezer is a really, really, really rich guy. He can make shields of gold. I keep talking about gold, but gold is malleable and soft. This probably is gold-plated something, right? I don't know. I don't even know if swinging a sword would actually dent a shield of gold if it was just only gold. Plus, gold is very, very heavy. I tried to hold a shield out there actually made of gold in battle. Might be a setback, but they're at least covered with gold, like the ark was acacia wood covered with gold on the inside and the out. All right, so it's something like that. He said, so he takes these shields and brought them to Jerusalem, and from Beta and from Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took exceeding much brass. All right, now he's taking minerals. All right, so he can make his own military equipment and shields and swords. All right, And then it says this. This is going the other way now, because those that are watching this, standing in the bleachers watching David do all this, are starting to decide which side you want to be on. You know, because I think if you're smart, you want to side with David, especially after everything he's done here. All the big armies have been defeated by the army of David. And it says, and when Toi, king of Hamath, heard that David had smitten all the host of Hadaezer, he said, when you beat that guy, all right, he said, then Toi sent Joram his son unto King David. So he sends an official envoy, which is his own boy. Okay, so this is top drawer. He's representing his dad. He sent Joram his son unto King David to salute him and to bless him. You know, I mean, now he's speaking favorably to him. It says, because he had fought against Hadaezer and smitten him, for Hadaezer had wars with Toi. That is, he's also Toi's enemy. So David wipes out Toi's enemy, so Toi is very thankful for what David did, because now he doesn't have Hadaezer to bother with, okay? And Joram brought him vessels of silver and vessels of gold and vessels of brass. That is, Toi's boy, Joram, brought all these gifts, which is not uncommon between kings, okay? So he brings some gold and silver and brass, and just a demonstration of the fact that we appreciate all you've done, David, taking out our enemy for us. That it's great, okay? Which also King David did dedicate unto the Lord. That is, he just took it, he dedicates it to the Lord with the silver and the gold that he had dedicated of all nations, which he subdued. It says he dedicated it to the Lord, all this spoil of Syria and of Moab and the children of Ammon. Now, it didn't mention Ammon here, but they would have been tied in with the Moabites, okay? The commentators link these two together as allies. Of Syria, Moab, the children of Ammon, of the Philistines, Amalek, the spoil of Hadaezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. So, he takes all this stuff, he just dedicates it to the Lord, all right? I mean, in battle. I mean, just, this is David. He is an amazing man, just clearly, all right? It said, and David got him a name when he returned from smiting the Syrians in the Valley of Salt. And the Valley of Salt, I just looked it up again. It is a valley on the southwestern end of the Dead Sea. There's a natural boundary there, and that's where this battle was fought. The smiting of the Syrians in the Valley of Salt, being 18,000 men. He beats the Assyrians. And just keep this in mind, Syria and Israel, and Syria and Judah are always going to be after each other. I mean, there is constant conflict through the Bible between Syria and Israel. All right, it just is nonstop. And Syria is just the nation north of Israel. So the capital of Israel in the north is going to be Samaria. The capital of Syria is going to be Damascus. And these two nations are border one another in the north, and they're just going to be constantly at war with one another. And sometimes they're going to try to align themselves because they think there's a more formidable force coming. But anytime you align yourself with Syria, it's a bad thing. Okay, they are the enemy of Israel. It says, so he defeats the Syrians, and then he says this, and he put garrisons in Edom. All right, in Edom, throughout all of Edom, he garrisons. And all they of Edom became David's servants. That is, he's going to tax them too. And the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And here it is again. In verse 6, it says, and the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. That's in verse 6. And in verse 14, again it says, and the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. That is, God was watching over him, guiding and directing him, giving him good counsel, and he was yielding and leading to the leading of the Spirit, and great victories were being won. This is a great time in David's life. Great victories are being won. It goes on to say, and David reigned over all Israel. Not only was he engaged in all these military conflicts, these battles which he won, it tells us he was good at home with the nation as well as the king. So he's not good just with foreign policy, but he's good with the local with the local care of the nation. All right. It said, and David reigned over all Israel, and David executed judgment in his justice unto all his people. That is, he was a good king. All right, his domestic policies were wonderful. His foreign policy was great. Whether he's away or whether he's at home, God was blessing his decision making, and the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went, whether or not he was out on the battlefield or whether or not he was in the palace adjudicating the issues of state. This is David. I mean, just a remarkable, amazing man. And then it goes on here, and I mentioned this in an earlier devotion about who Zariah was, because I said I knew Joab and Abishai and Ahazi were all related to David. And my sister, who is her own theologian, she says, well, Zariah is David's sister. I said, there you go. That makes Joab and Abishai and Asahel his nephews, okay? So it's Uncle David the king. Remember, that's what we're looking at here. So Joab is in charge of his army. He's the captain. So his nephew is actually in charge of the army. His nephew is the one that killed Ahab, took him aside. Him and Abishai killed Ahab for killing their younger brother. And remember I said how unjust that was, because the killing of the younger brother was in time of war, and they killed Abner in a time of peace. That was murder. Well, these are the guys. These are David's nephews. And that's why he said they were causing him such grief, because it was in the family. I got these two nephews that are causing me this grief, Uncle David, the king says. Yeah, okay. Anyway, we're going to start talking about these nephews here, only they're going to speak of them in terms of being grown men and commanders of the army. All right, it says this, and Joab, the son of Zariah, was over the host. That is, he's the general over the host of David's army. He's the one leading all of these victories. Now, David is the king, and they're following the strategy of the king, but the one that's actually implementing this on the battlefield is Joab, his nephew. All right? And Jehoshaphat, the son of Ashilud, was the recorder. That is, we're going to have a secretary here to keep track of the history and everything that's happened. We need a clerk. This is the clerk, the recorder. And then you had, and Zadok, the son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, were the priests. So you got Zadok, and you got Ahimelech, okay, the son of Abiathar. These are the two priests. Okay, these are good guys. Were the priests, and Zariah was the scribe. Okay, he's going to be like the lawyer. He's going to keep an eye on the kingdom, make sure everything is functioning properly. And then in verse 18, we are introduced to this guy Benaiah. Benaiah, who turns out to be, especially during the reign of Solomon, one of the baddest guys you're ever going to find in the Bible. This is Benaiah. His dad was a priestly warrior. He was a priestly warrior. These guys have a lineage of being warriors. And when you talk about Benaiah, he is a loyal soldier. He is a lieutenant, so to speak, that is going to end up being David and Solomon's closest ally, as if a personal bodyguard. That's what we're looking at. And he's going to mention here that he's in charge. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, his dad was just a powerful and godly man, and so is Benaiah. I mean, these guys are fighters. They're warriors. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over both the Cherethites and the Pelethites. And everybody wants to know who these guys are. And I did some work on this out of some really old, 17th century Reformation era books. The actual books I had in my hand. And as close as we can get, and I'm not going to give you a lot of detail about it, but the Cherethites and the Pelethites appear to be like the Secret Service and personal bodyguards of David, of the king. They are skilled, but if we bring it into a Roman context, they're like the emperor's praetorian. Now I know I'm jumping into a whole nother culture, but the praetorian was there specifically to be bodyguards for the emperor. The Cherethites and the Pelethites appear, because we don't know that much about them, to be of the same capacity, of which Benaiah is the leader. These guys are the baddest of the baddest to care for the king. All right, and Benaiah is the one who's responsible for these guys. All right. So when you read about Benaiah and Jehoiada in the Bible, and you read about the Cherethites and the Pelethites, just think that these guys are like Navy SEALs who are, or Rangers, all right, along those lines, Army Rangers, all right. These are the Marine Special Forces, all right, who are there to protect the king, all right. And Benaiah is the captain. He's the baddest of them all, and he is a godly man. He listens to the king, especially when you get young Solomon on the throne. When we start the next book in First Kings, Benaiah is there to take care of young Solomon in a very, very treacherous time. Very, very treacherous time. You're going to hear about the nobility and honor of this guy, Benaiah. All right. Anyway, so it says, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over both the Cherethites and the Pelethites. And then it says, and David's sons, that is, David's sons were the chief rulers. That is, he gave them administrative responsibilities in the kingdom. And because things are going well, I can only assume it, because it doesn't say much about this, but his boys are doing a good job too. All right. And we know that the one son going to be born of Bathsheba is going to end up being the next king. But up until this time, these guys are just working in the government or whatever capacity, and they are contributing. David's sons, through the multiple wives he has, are contributing to the smooth and proper operation of the kingdom, which is exactly what we want to see. Okay, that is chapter 8. So the big takeaway from this is in verse 4, when he extends the boundary of Israel all the way to the Euphrates River, which ties it with Genesis chapter 15. Then you have all the local enemies all subdued, either beaten and taxed or just taxed. And then at the end of this, twice it says that the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And then you have a record here at the end of his primary officers, of his cabinet, who's in charge of the Department of Defense, which is Joab, and who's the recorder. All right, and this is that's going to be Jehoshaphat. And who are your priests? And that's Zadok and Ahimelech. And who is your scribe? All right, this is Sariah. And then you have Benaiah. We have the mention of Benaiah here, who is taking care of the king. All right. Well, the Lord bless you. What is it? Today's Thursday, so one more tomorrow. That was episode 178. I mean, it all piles up, doesn't it? It's like a penny. You save a penny, and before you know, it's $1, and then it's $2. It keeps going. But that's the way. What you're seeing here in morning devotions in just a thimbleful is what Christians just are supposed to be doing. Okay, we build and build and build. We add and add. Nothing happens overnight. We absorb what we can. We learn what we can. All right, and then like I've been preaching in James. It's not just hearing and it's not just saying. It's doing. All right, that's the key. That's what makes us Christians: the doing and the practicing of the principles that we learn in God's Word. All right. Well, Lord bless you. You have a great day. And again, I want to thank everybody for sharing this stuff. It's remarkable how much exposure we're getting. So we just thank the Lord for it. As I said, I'm not a salesman. I'm not going to turn into a salesman. But we appreciate what the Lord's doing with the reach that these morning devotions is getting. So we'll just pray that it's a blessing and encouragement. And again, I mean, I assert all this stuff, but if you have any questions about any of this, I mean, blast away. I mean, it's not a problem, all right? And I'll get to it I'll get to it, all right? I just had one of the saints I've known for years. I mean, for years and years. Just text me about a question, which I thought was pretty interesting. Happens all the time, all right? So just let me know if you have a question about anything, and if it's something I can help you with, I will. And if it's not, I know other people that know a lot of stuff. I can talk to them. Okay. All right. Well, the Lord bless you. You have a great day. And Lord willing, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Okay. We'll see you. Bye.